Well, Blake Lively is back in the courts today, and the docket is just wild. You're not going to believe it until you see it, but she is requesting even more sanctions on the Wayfarer people, okay? She is big mad, and I think I have some answers to why that might be. It might be the secret recording that didn't exactly play the way her and her lawyers have been trying to spoon feed us to believe it would. Yeah, but you're not gonna believe this court filing, okay? Welcome back to this channel. My name is Mandy Magnan. I am an actor, writer, producer, and director, as well as a YouTube commentator on everything It Ends With Us, pop culture, and movie reviews. It is awesome to have you here, and we are going straight into It Ends With Never, okay? Because wait till I show you what's going on. Grab your emotional support lip gloss. You are in frame with Mandy Magnan. Blake Lively. It's obvious. Do you not have any other moves? Okay, because while the secret recording was being set to be released on the 20th, you were crashing out on Instagram, and in the most unserious way, because the audacity, the gulls, the gusto that you have on the 20th, while this secret recording, possibly illegal, we don't know yet where they were, how that all happened. To me, it seems like maybe they were on a video conference call, just the way that they were speaking. You knew it was being released on the 20th, and this is what you chose to do on your Instagram. Start posting over and over and over again about DV. I mean, it's absolutely tone deaf. It's just absolutely disgusting. There's posts and posts and posts about DV awareness, what to do. And what's so crazy is the entire time you had a movie about DV where you could have even taken a moment to be serious, to say something to support DV, you chose not to. You chose to sell your hair care line and alcohol. You had alcoholic drinks at your premiere of It Ends With Us at the party, because remember, Wayfarer did their own party, even though they had to pay for both, right? At your party, you had alcoholic beverages from Betty Boo's, like Ryle Can Wait. Alcoholic beverages named from the abuser in the movie of DV. While at the Wayfarer party, they had a dry party. No alcohol was being served at all. And now you wait until October 20th of 2025, over a year later, when you should have said something, when you should have been talking about DV, when you should have supported actual survivors. The day that this secret recording that you've been hanging over everyone's heads since December 20th has come out, and that's the time that you decide to post about DV on your Instagram. Absolutely delusional, crazy. I think both Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are absolutely narcissistic sociopaths. And I think they know exactly what she's doing. And Blake knows exactly what she's doing by doing this, trying to get a rise out of everyone. It's a gaslighting technique 101. I think she knows exactly what she's doing, and she's distracting people from the truth, which is the recording, which is a bunch of nothing. And she's been holding it and holding it and holding it above the Wayfarer people's heads that Steve Sarowitz had did this $1 billion backer said that she was so scared. Remember in her deposition? Yeah, of course, I was so scared for my life to know that this man said these things about me. When in reality, they were laughing and it was a joke. And he even said, no, not dead. Like that, And now she's talking about DV. And you know why? Because there are still the mainstream publications like this one that are going to pick it up and eat it up like, oh my God, Blake Lively, an advocate for domestic violence. Oh, an advocate for women. The fuck she is. You know what I'm saying? Sorry to curse, but no. Not today, not tomorrow, and not next year will she be, okay? And not only that, but every single headline today about Blake Lively is her in this freaking maroon mahogany, whatever they want to call it, with the Louis Vuittons. Every headline you Google Blake Lively, and it's this dang photo op, which was set up obviously by Leslie Sloan, because these aren't candid. This isn't just Blake walking down the street and the paparazzi caught her. This is forced PR shoved down our throats so we don't forget Blake Lively, the fashionista, all while she is in the court docket. And let me just show you what's going on today. It all starts here on October 22nd. So everything was quiet since the judge put in, I believe on the 17th, that the tape needs to be released on the 20th, okay? It was pretty quiet. A couple of new lawyers got added for the Wayfarer, but other than that, there was nothing else going on. And then you have today, the 22nd, and look at the docket, Blake Lively. A memorandum of law in support for motion of sanctions, a declaration from Ezra Hudson. Look at all these exhibits. Look at all these exhibits. Oh my God. This is all Blake Lively, okay? She is a mess on this court docket. This is not the first, not the second, and probably won't be the last time that she does this. You have a letter motion to seal, okay? So a lot of them got sealed. So this is a letter motion to seal most of those exhibits. A couple of them are open, but for the most part, they're all sealed. You have a letter motion again to seal, and that's addressed to Judge Lyman. You have a motion for sanctions from who else? Stephanie motherfucking Jones. Yeah, she wants to support Blake Lively for spoliation sanctions. You have a memorandum of law. This is filed by Blake Lively. Another memorandum of law, motion for sanctions. This is filed by Stephanie motherfucking Jones. Her and Blake are just, what is going on? Well, we are going to find out because we're going to go over it right now. My dear friend, Stephanie motherfucking Jones, and the psychopath, Blake Lively, are asking for spoliation sanctions on the Wayfarer people. Spoliation sanctions refers to penalties a court or the judge, which Judge Lyman may or may not do, he can oppose with a person or party that destroys, alters, hides, or fails to preserve evidence that's related to the case. So I guess Blake Lively and Stephanie motherfucking Jones are saying that Wayfarer purposely either destroyed, altered, hid, or failed to preserve relevant evidence. Let's see what they have to say for themselves. This is the first thing that's filed. It's 2 pages, and this is from Blake Lively, I believe Ezra Hudson. Yeah, Ezra Hudson and that firm. And it just says, please take notice that for the reasons stated in the accompanying memorandum of law in support of plaintiff Blake Lively's motion for spoliation sanctions and the accompanying declaration of Ezra Hudson dated October 22nd, with the exhibits attached thereto, the undersigned will move this court before Judge Lyman at the United States Courthouse for the Southern District of New York, located at 500 Pearl Street, on a date and time to be set forth by the court for an order pursuant to Rule 37E of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, issuing spoliation sanctions against defendants Wayfarer Studios, LLC, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Steve Soritz, It Ends With Us Movie LLC, Melissa Nathan, The Agency Group, PR LLC, and Jennifer Abel, collectively the Wayfarer defendants, and defendants Jed Wallace and Street Relations, Inc., collectively the Wallace defendants, for their failure to preserve electronically stored information. For those reasons and those set forth in more detail in the accompanying memorandum of law, the court should grant Miss Lively's motion in its entirety. These lawyers must be exhausted. Like, yo, you guys already just lost a massive case for Drake, and now you're fighting this hard for Blake when everyone knows the case is crumbling and literally imploding day by day by day, and yet you're still going and grasping? It's crazy. At this point, they are bleeding their clients dry, okay? Because if we get into it and it's about signal messages, they've already said, and the judge already knows, that signal messages auto-delete. That's the purpose of using signal messages. And we'll just see what's going to happen here. But I'm like, aren't y'all just tired? Blake, get over. Now this is like the 4th or 5th time now that she's asked the judge for sanctions, attorney fees, treble fees, everything. She's really grasping. But let's just see maybe they have a good argument. I'm just like, shouldn't you all be just focused on trial at this point and actually being able to prove your case? Because so far, zero sexual harassment. So far, zero smear campaign. It actually looks the opposite, that Blake Lively was harassing Justin and Brendan Sklenar, in my opinion, as well as definitely Blake Lively and her people were smearing Wayfarer and Justin Baldoni. Don't get it twisted. It wasn't the other way around, and there's actual evidence. This is the declaration by Ezra Hudson, and now at this point, we all know that Blake Lively's lawyers like to fluff around, twist the truth, cherry pick information, and pretty much, I would say, straight up lie. They seem like liar, liar, pants on fire, and anything to do to get their client any type of win. We know that because of all of the ways that they've been caught lying so far to the court. It's absolutely wild. But this is the declaration in support of these new sanctions. Okay, let's just go over it real quick and then we'll actually get into the meat and potatoes of it. So this is what she's saying. Signal communications. I just read it like quickly because I didn't want to go over this whole thing. Signal communications. So what I just said before pausing the video, I was like, yo, if they're talking about signal communications, get out of here. They already auto delete. That is what they're talking about. Signal communications, which were produced several times over by different custodians and after deduplicating yielded a total of only 7 unique signal communications. So they already have it from other people, but they're like, oh, it's not good enough. We want it from Wayfarer. But it's like, if they auto-deleted and they don't have it, you should just be happy that you got them from somebody, you know? I think they're just not able to prove their case still, and they're really like needing something. They're still looking for proof. They're still looking for evidence. They're still looking for a smoking gun that will at all prove even just the slightest that Wayfarer did exactly what they said that they did. Then she says, despite the court's order denying leave to do so. So remember on September 8th, Wayfarer was given until September 8th to produce all of their signal communications. And they did so. It says right here on September 8th at 11:56 p.m., the Wayfarer defendants produced over 80,000 pages. Oh my gosh. Okay. This was from Wayfarer, Baldoni, Heath, Sarowitz, Tag, Nathan, and Abel. It seems like they gave them everything that they wanted. Okay. But after reviewing it by the litigation team and Ezra personally overseeing it, they're saying that it wasn't enough because through those 80,000 pages, only 62 were signal communications. Signal communications, which were produced several times over by different custodians after deduplicating, yielding a total of only 7 unique signal communications. Then they go on to cry about how Wayfarer asked for a 1-week extension. The judge denied it, but then Wayfarer still rolled out production as it became available, including September 12th, September 18th, and October 9th for defendants Heath, Sarowitz, and Wayfarer. Since receiving these productions, I caused Ezra personally, Ezra Hudson took, time out of her crazy busy day to work on this. She caused an internal review of defendants' productions to be performed, which she oversaw. Among other things, based on this internal review, I understand that defendants have not produced any of the signal communications previously produced by third-party The Skyline Agency. I further understand that none of the defendants, including Defendant Wallace, has produced a single voice memo from Defendant Wallace predating December 20th, 2024. In addition, based on the internal review of Wayfarer defendants' productions, I understand that none of the Wayfarer defendants have produced signal communications that predate December 2024. Counsel for Ms. Lively has raised concerns with the Wayfarer Defendants Council, including requesting confirmation as to whether any signal communications prior to December 2024 exist. In response, counsel for the Wayfarer defendants confirmed that they have produced non-privileged signal communications within their client's possession, custody, or control. I feel like we've been through this already, and the judge came back and said they can't produce things that they don't have. We've been here before, so this is wild that they're trying this trick again. Then it just goes on to about all the exhibits, how it's a true and correct copy, blah, blah. Look at all the exhibits. Oh my gosh, this is wild. Then it says on September 30th, 2025, Ms. Lively served her responses and objections to Defendant Tag's second set of interrogatories, which, among other things, requested that Miss Lively identify in reasonable detail the negative content about Miss Lively, including through engagement of comments on social media that you allege was amplified by the agency Group PR LLC, as alleged in paragraph 230 of the second amended complaint, including but not limited to, for each item of content identified, A, the actual words or other content that was negative, B, the name of the person posting the content, C, the date the content was publicized, and D, a link to the content. Based on new information, including deposition testimony that was subsequently discovered, Miss Lively supplemented her responses and objections to the second set of interrogatories on October 2nd, October 9th, and October 17th. And you know why? It's because she can't answer it, because there was none. She has no idea. They still have no idea. That's why they can't answer that question. They probably haven't found anything yet. Okay, but it's here we go. Here we go again. Okay, buckle in, because here we go. This is the memorandum of law in support of spoliation sanctions. It is 30 pages, but I think a lot of it's going to be like not, but buckle in because we're going to go for it. Here we go. Table of contents. I already see a lot of things are redacted, so this should be interesting. What does this redaction say? Defendants admit that they anticipated litigation by August 2024, and yeah, they did. They were anticipating it because y'all wanted them to make a public apology and said that if they don't, gloves would come off, and you were running to the media, creating all of these lies and smearing Justin Baldoni. Yeah, they thought litigation was going to happen. Oh gosh, here we go. Let's go. Introduction. It is by now well known that defendants texted and emailed each other about their ability to execute an untraceable... I'm so sorry. I haven't read this yet, guys, so I'm just trying, because this untraceable retaliatory campaign, I mean, I guess it wasn't so untraceable, right? Because Megan Twohey from the New York Times said that she knew it to be true after reading thousands of pages of text messages. So it was found out. I mean, if it was untraceable, why are we here today? Like, why does Blake Lively, if she has no evidence because it's untraceable? Like, let's get over it. Like, this is so crazy. They only say it's untraceable because of one text message from either Jennifer Abel or Melissa Nathan, who say it will be virtually untraceable. And now they're just like, oh, I can't. It's so ridiculous. After over 10 months of this case, and they still have nothing. But let's just go. Okay. I'm sorry. It's just so funny that they make it. Oh, it is now well known. Yeah, everyone knows it. Y'all, you can't gaslight us anymore, okay? We're not buying it. You have no evidence of sexual harassment and no evidence of a retaliatory smear campaign. There is evidence, however, of Blake Lively completely hijacking the movie, extortion, and pushing Wayfarer out all the way down to the basement of the premiere. There's evidence of that, though, okay? It is by now well known that defendants texted and emailed each other about their ability to execute an untraceable retaliatory campaign against Blake Lively that would leave no fingerprints. Their defense from the outset has been that they never moved beyond the scenario planning stage, which was a blueprint intended to bury Miss Lively and her career. Along with their counsel, they have mocked Miss Lively's use of the term untraceable. Oh, sheesh, that's me. I just mocked it. That's hilarious. Okay. Well, at least we're all on the same page. But everyone, guess what? Everyone's mocking the term untraceable, okay? Along with their counsel, they have mocked Miss Lively's use of the term untraceable, even though it was first used by defendant Nathan in stressing the importance of leaving no paper trail. And they have routinely taunted that Miss Lively will not be able to prove that defendants actually implemented the retaliatory campaign, insisting that the sudden onslaught of negative publicity against her began in August of 2024 was organic. coinciding perfectly with their plans by sheer luck. The audacity to be able to write this with a serious face after we know what Blake Lively did on that set, the monstrous behavior that she did, the disaster of the post-production, pushing, clawing her way, fighting her way into the editing room, to just take a back seat, just be a passenger. But yet, all of a sudden, she was in there, and Justin Baldoni, the director of the film, wasn't. Let's just think about that. Let's just, and then she got the entire cast to unfollow Justin Baldoni. She refused to let them at the premiere unless they sat in a separate screening room in the freaking basement. So yeah, people had questions. And then her absolute tone-deaf marketing campaign through her husband's Maximum Effort company is why she got backlash. I mean, to be able to just write this with a serious face, to me, says that the lawyers literally are just money, because the evidence is already out. The evidence is already out of what she did. Meanwhile, defendants have hid the ball at every turn in the discovery process, either failing to produce documents or improperly cloaking them in the attorney-client privilege, forcing no less than 12 discovery-related motions to date against defendants and their aligned third parties. Now that the dust has settled and fact discovery and depositions have closed, two things are clear. One, despite defendants' clumsy efforts to cover their tracks, there is substantial evidence that the retaliatory campaign was in fact implemented as planned. And two, defendants flouted this court's orders and destroyed and or failed to preserve or produce additional material and highly relevant evidence, the absence of which they intend to try to unjustly exploit in their favor. Ms. Lively brings this motion to stop defendants from benefiting from their own misconduct as described below. This is going to be something. First, defendants used ephemeral methods of communication, thereby destroying and or failing to preserve relevant communications in real time. They didn't know when they were using signal messages that y'all were going to start this huge court case and file the CRD in the 20th. Like, if they were using signal messages in the fall, they delete automatically. So they weren't destroying or failing to preserve relevant communications in real time. They had no idea Blake was going to file the CRD complaint, and they had no idea that y'all were going to ask for messages for years back. Obviously, it should start the day the CRD complaint was filed. Okay. In their depositions, most of the defendants admitted, we have a redaction, including as early as July. The evidence further shows that Mr. Wallace, redacted, at the height of their discussion of a retaliatory campaign. Indeed, this court has already recognized that it is undisputed that the Wayfarer parties used Signal to discuss topics relevant to this litigation. Accordingly, the court previously ordered that the Wayfarer defendants to produce their Signal communications, including those of their counsel, by September 8th, 2025. They not only failed to timely produce all responsive communications, but none of the defendants ever produced any Signal communications predating December 20th, 2024. Not one. For the Wallace defendants, the reason for this is clear. They admitted to the court that they did not disable the auto-delete function on Signal, even though Signal was their preferred method of communication for work. The remaining defendants cannot explain their failure to preserve or produce relevant Signal communications or voice memos from Mr. Wallace prior to December 20th, 2024. But it is clear that the messages are destroyed and cannot be replaced. This fact is all the more damning, given the Wayfarer defendants' lead attorney, Brian Freeman, was a participant on at least some Signal communications with the defendants by August 2024, and yet apparently did nothing to ensure these key communications were preserved. What does the footnote say? None of the defendants produced a signal voice memo from Mr. Wallace at any time prior to December 20th, including Mr. Wallace. Notably, however, Catherine Case did produce one voice memo from Mr. Wallace dated August 5th in her third-party production. Deposition for Justin Baldoni dated October 6th. Ooh, okay. Baldoni. Defendants further contemplated litigation as early as August 2024, although the evidence shows that most of them were clearly aware of the possibility of legal action by November of 2023, yet took no steps whatsoever to preserve their signal or voice memo communications until December 20th, 2024. Incredibly, Mr. Baldoni testified that, dun dun dun, I wonder what it says, but why they think that there is going to be legal action in November 2023? Why would they think that? November 2023. Because Blake Lively put out that 17-point list of demands. If there was going to be legal action, wouldn't her attorney have joined the January 4th meeting? Wouldn't her attorney be present and not her husband, Ryan Reynolds? No, because once they signed that 17-point letter of demand, Blake Lively was, woohoo, she had her kids on set the next day, for crying out loud. Okay? Hello? Why would they anticipate legal action when Blake Lively herself that said nothing else happened after January? After they got the 17-point list of demand, everything was Gucci. No, nothing else happened. But things did happen, didn't they, Blake? You executed your plan to take over the movie and hijack the movie. You executed your plan to smear the Wayfarer people. We continue. Second, defendants produced no documents and provided minimal testimony about the work they claim the Wallace defendants actually performed for their $90,000 fee in 2024, to which defendants either feigned, ignored, or described with one word, monitoring. No one, however, including Mr. Wallace, has been able to explain what monitoring actually involved. And more importantly, not a single pre-December 20th, 2024 document has been produced, either one, backing up the defendant's claim that all the Wallace defendants did was monitor, or two, reflecting the supposed monitoring work that was performed. In defendant's entire document production, there are no reports, text messages, notes, or email summaries reflecting this alleged social media monitoring work from August 2024. Having retained the Wallace defendants to perform a detailed set of untraceable digital services, paid the Wallace defendants $90,000 over a period of 3 months for those services, and communicated with the Wallace defendants through communications intended to eliminate any digital trail. Defendants now hope to blame Miss Lively for being hindered in her ability to present the specific direct evidence they destroyed. But as described in more detail below, there is substantial evidence that defendants indeed engaged in the conduct detailed in their scenario planning documents and did exactly what the Wallace defendants and TAG proposed to do, the digital campaign as defined specifically below in Section 2B, which is entirely consistent with redaction. Given the foregoing, severe sanctions are warranted to prevent defendants from benefiting from their willful misconduct. To remedy the prejudice caused by the spoliated evidence, Ms. Lively respectfully seeks 1. An adverse interference that defendants intentionally deleted and failed to preserve relevant evidence when they had no obligation to do so, and that the destroyed evidence would have further shown defendants' execution of the digital campaign. 2. Preclusion sanctions to prevent defendants from arguing that they did not execute their digital campaign as they openly planned to do, or that the Wallace defendants did not actually engage in the digital campaign services they were hired and paid to perform, given the destruction of document evidence that would otherwise show that the Wallace defendants actually did. And 3. Monetary sanctions, at least in the amount of Miss Lively's reasonable attorney fees and costs for bringing this motion. Well, you didn't have to bring the motion because this is kind of cray-cray, but let's see more. She's just looking for money because these lawyers I know cost millions. Background. Certain Wayfarer defendants acknowledged receipt of a legal letter on or about November 9th, 2023, triggering an obligation to preserve evidence. On November 9th, 2023, prior to returning to production on the film It Ends With Us, which had been halted between June and October 2023 due to the strike. We all know that. Ms. Lively's attorneys sent Wayfarer's attorneys a document entitled Protection for Return to Production. In the underlying transmittal email, Ms. Lively's attorney explained that the purpose of the production's document was to ensure that Ms. Lively and others feel safe returning to the production, and further warned Wayfarer's attorney that if production is unwilling to accept or uphold these protections, our client is prepared to pursue her full legal rights and remedies. Mr. Baldoni and the Wayfarer defendants who received the document, redacted, text messages dated November 11th, 2023 from Mr. Baldoni to Mr. Heath and Mr. Saritz remove any doubt as to their understanding. Look at all these redactions. This is crazy. Emphasis added. Mr. Heath testified that he understood this document. Later, Mr. Heath took active steps to prepare for such litigation. This is just like, don't even know what they're saying because it's just so redacted. That same day, June 17th, 2024, Mr. Baldoni asked for the recommendation of, I assume that's a lawyer because we've seen these text messages, to which Ms. Abel suggested BF is ready to go. I've seen that text message. So why are they redacting the text that we haven't seen? I guarantee the Wayfarer people are going to ask for this to be unsealed because it's all of Mr. Heath, Mr. Saritz, and Mr. Baldoni's deposition. But what I find interesting about this is because it does, if the letter at the end does say if production is unwilling to accept or uphold these protections, but they did uphold them. So why would they think there was litigation started? But anyway, we're going to continue because this is all kind of redacted. Defendants decide to against Miss Lively in August of 2024. Why is that word redacted? I'm sure it's like smear, attack, go retaliate, something like that. So like, I'm sure it's smear because it's in, quotes. So I don't know why they redacted that. That's kind of crazy. The footnote does say immediately upon receiving the protections document, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath wrote to somebody. Deposition of Jennifer Abel dated. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, since at least early August 2024, defendants have engaged in a retaliatory campaign against Miss Lively designed to bury and destroy her career. Among other things, defendants plan digital efforts and have included amplifying or boosting trends or narratives that are favorable to Mr. Baldoni or to manufacture and perpetrate negative narratives about Miss Lively. So it does say that that's from the Heath's deposition or something, example 24 of Heath. So we'll see what that is. Fearing that Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's misconduct on the set of the film would become public as the film's August 9th, 2024 release date neared, on or about August 3rd, Wayfarer retained TAG as a crisis PR firm to prepare to discredit Miss Lively in the court of public opinion should she dare to tell the truth about what happened. You have a whole bunch of things here to that end. Okay, so this is all just, we all know this. They're just rehashing all of the points that they think that we already are going to believe, but we already know kind of what happened when it came in August, how they got Melissa Nathan, how they had the scenario planning. Shortly after her first conversation with Wayfarer, Miss Nathan reached out to Wallace defendants, TAG's regular collabs, and shared details of Miss Lively's protections document on August 5th. Realizing they needed an experienced social media manipulator on or about August 7th due to the uptick in social chatter, TAG recommended retaining, and Wayfarer did retain the Wallace. But they already say like due to the uptick in social chatter, meaning before they even got Jed Wallace, there was, what is that called? Organic chatter. They say it themselves. Due to the uptick in social chatter, they retained Wallace, okay? For a rate of $30,000 a month. TAG employees Katie Case detailed the Wallace defendant's services with bullet points in the August 7th proposal, which Miss Lively refers to throughout this motion as the digital campaign. So we've already read that, and nothing in this digital campaign, either then other than the third bullet, which I've arrowed now, has anything to do with Blake Lively. Nothing else has to do with Blake other than that third bullet point, which is leverage relationships with Discord, Reddit, X, IG, TikTok, YouTube, etc. to expose behavior of Blake and other parties, both current and past, and engage directly with communities to adjust or influence the conversation taking place in real time. Other than that, Blake is not mentioned at all. It's all about pro-Justin content and pro-Wayfarer content. It has nothing to do with Blake. So the fact that she's going to use this document when she is only in it one time, again, Delulu wild. They're not thinking about you, babe, like that. You know what I mean? In this proposal, Ms. Case took care to note that the integral part here is to execute all without fingerprints, demonstrating that the decision to conduct business with no paper trail, including via the use of ephemeral messages capabilities for digital services, was not an accident, but rather the plan all along. That plan was enable defendants to hide in part how they implemented the digital campaign against Ms. Lively. Documents produced during discovery pursuant to court orders ordering the Wallace defendants to disclose the identities of their clients, however, show that the TAG and Wallace defendants are not only capable of implementing the above social manipulation tactics, but that they have done so. This is why I was like, there's no way that Jed Wallace should have to show his client list for 5 years or something. It was like 3 to 5 years ago. He had to show his client list because I knew Blake Lively was going to use it against him. And look at all of this. Look at this. This is throwing Jed Wallace under the bus, his entire client list. Look, Mr. Requesting client to call. Mr. Wallace expressing the need to. Look at all of this. Oh my God. That's brutal. That's brutal. I mean, it's like literally giving his, if these get unredacted, it just throws his clients under the bus. So other people that have used Jed Wallace, so any other celebrities or anything that have used Jed Wallace, as well as what he did for them. And I'm sure this is just the beginning for Blake Lively, and that's why she wanted to get her hands on that client list so bad. By no later than August 12th, 2024, defendants, Wayfarer, took to the offensive. Using their own words, it was time to lawyer up, get da-da-da and da-da-da. Even though defendants tooted their use of clandestine tactics to avoid leaving any fingerprints, they were not entirely successful and still managed to leave a significant paper trail that evidences their extensive efforts to engage in a retaliatory campaign. Ms. Lively's 23-plus page interrogatory response summarizing and consolidating the evidence demonstrating some of defendants' conduct directed at Ms. Lively. For example, consistent with the scenario planning documents, key messaging points, defendants were strategic and deliberate in successfully planting seeds of doubt and speculation about Ms. Lively's experience on set, amplifying positive narratives about Mr. Baldoni designed to provide a contrast with negative messages regarding Ms. Lively, and amplifying negative stories and content focusing on Ms. Lively. This is going to turn out, I think, to be the same thing as Drake, where it's going to be like, whoa, what was good for one is good for the other, because Blake Lively and Leslie Sloan and Ryan Reynolds were playing ball too, okay? And they were playing offensive as well and coming out and smearing Justin and Wayfarer the entire month of August. Defendants used this signal stuff is crazy. Defendants used communications as early as August 2024. Consistent with their efforts to run an untraceable campaign with no fingerprints, defendants communicated frequently through Signal, an encrypted messaging platform that features auto deletion capabilities and voice memos that delete automatically unless saved by the recipient. Then you have a whole bunch of redacted stuff. Just days later, on August 10th, Mr. Heath emailed Mr. Wallace to... 2 days later, the tag defendant started a new Signal thread with Wallace, just in case they needed Wallace to connect them with Brian Freeman, because they're very, very close. Emphasis added. Yeah, you did add that emphasis, because in the text it doesn't have that, okay? Then it goes on about the depositions. Nothing, it's all redacted. Later in this text thread, Miss Nathan, We've already seen these text messages, so anything that has the text in them, that's why I'm like, why are they redacted? Because we've already read all of the text messages. All of the signal messages were already unsealed by Judge Lyman, so it's kind of crazy that they're like sealing everything, but because they had no problem doxing people's information before, you know. Later in this text thread, Miss Nathan instructed Miss Abel to definitely contact Mr. Freeman on Signal. Documents from this same period, August of 2024, also confirm that Mr. Wallace communicated blank. Wallace deposition, and then they have him at his deposition. See also iPhone user guide, send and receive audio messages in messages on iPhone. Oh my gosh. Tap keep to save an incoming or outgoing audio message. Otherwise, the recording is deleted from the conversation. At his deposition, Mr. Heath confirmed blank, blank, blank. Oh my God. Both Miss Nathan and Miss Abel admitted to Miss Nathan dated September 29th, 2025. So I guess, I don't know what they admitted to, but I guess they all kind of said their signal messages or what they were talking about or what they did on social media. The same is true for Mr. Wallace, who confirmed. Third-party productions confirm. In addition, after Miss Lively filed her complaint with the Civil Rights Department and served defendants with cease and desist letters on December 20th, Tag created a new Signal chat. The very next day, Tag started a new Signal thread, redacted, in a separate text chain the same day. Okay. Ever since the filing of this action, defendants have continued to use Signal and ask for Miss Wallace voice memos to communicate covertly about their ongoing retaliation. The judge already said anything after February 18th is no longer a retaliatory campaign. Okay, so now they're still trying to say, like, to this day, they're still communicating this way. Yeah, they're allowed to. They're allowed to defend themselves. They're allowed to communicate. You can't say that now, October 2025, is still the same retaliatory campaign that you're trying to sue them for from August of 2024. What is that, 15 months later? Get a freaking grip, okay? For example, recently produced Signal communications show that days after Miss Lively commenced this action, defendants and Mr. Brian Freeman were working with content creators to further their pro-Baldoni and anti-Lively campaign. On January 3rd, 2025, okay, so I guess they got some names of content creators. 2 days later, on January 5th, a recording that was not produced. On January 7th, Miss Steele posted her carefully curated video from her official TikTok account. Whoa. Why are they throwing another woman under the bus? Blake Lively does not care. Why isn't her name redacted? That is crazy. When you get everything on this thing that's been redacted so far, including all of the text messages, and they don't redact this, that is nuts. But I am definitely going to look this up after. Absolutely revolting she is, because that is so crazy that you're literally redacting text messages that have already been unsealed, that we've already read through, but then you don't redact actual content creators' names. You're gross. Okay. Anyway, this lady, Miss Steele, posted her carefully curated video from her official TikTok account at official Sage Steele that covered blank. I'm sure that says Blake Lively and it ends with us, and has garnered over 1.5 million views. In her video post, Miss Steele slams Miss Lively, accusing her of abusing her power and hurting other women, and claiming that Miss Lively's actions discredit other women that are true victims of sexual harassment. I mean, yeah, if the shoe fits. I mean, I think we all agree that that is Blake Lively. Okay, so then you're going to have to come after all of us. Signal communications from February 1st, 2025, which were produced by third-party the Skyline Agency, also show defendants working with Mr. Freeman, his law firm, and Skyline to launch a website that would post communications between Miss Lively and Mr. Baldoni in relation to the ongoing litigation. The handful of signal communications and voice memos that were produced by Skyline during this period demonstrate that it's all redacted. Despite this, not one defendant, including the Wallace defendants, has produced a single voice memo from Mr. Wallace prior to December 20th, 2024, during their implementation of the digital campaign. Defendants admit that they anticipated litigation by August 2024 and blank. In their verified interrogatory responses, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, Mr. Saritz, Ms. Nathan, Ms. Abel, and Tag each, I'm sure that said that in August they were thinking this would have to go, because even in the secret recording that Claire Ayub, we now know, secretly recorded Steve Soritz, he says, we thought that we would have to go to court, but it turns out it's probably not going to happen, but you never know, or something. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but of course they thought Blake was acting like a freaking psychopath and still is. Of course they thought they were going to have to go to court. It is clear, however, that they anticipated litigation even before then. Indeed, Wayfarer compiled a timeline of Miss Lively's alleged incidents in June, interviewed Tag as early as July 25th, after which time Tag created an August 2nd scenario planning document contemplating working with legal, and shortly thereafter retained street relation. Still, not one defendant has produced a signal... Still, not one defendant has produced a single signal communication or, for Mr. Wallace, any voice memo that predated December 20th. How many times are you going to say it? How many times? Yeah, it's been like 14 times now you've said the same thing. Email from Wayfarer Defendants Counsel dated September 22nd, 2025. That is because defendants blank. Miss Nathan claims that she began preserving blank. Heath deposition transcript. Anyway, this is like, I guess, all of them confirming that they kind of knew that litigation was coming. These representations are difficult to accept at face value when third parties produce documents dated after the CRD complaint that were not included in party productions. And then they talk a lot about the depositions of Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni. So we'll see. Defendants' obstructive conduct in this litigation confirms that sanctions are appropriate. The facts discussed immediately above were only recently obtained by Ms. Lively after overcoming substantial discovery hurdles created by the defendants. There is no dispute that each of the defendants used Signal as a messaging platform to discuss issues related to this litigation. This court has already acknowledged as much. Ms. Lively first requested these Signal communications on February 20th, 2025, and the parties thereafter explicitly agreed in the ESI protocol governing discovery to manually review Signal communications among any party to the action. Yet, for almost 6 months, defendants refused to produce any of them and forced Ms. Lively to file repeated motions to compel. In response, the Wallace defendants admitted that because they did not disable Signal's auto deletion feature, no responsive communications remained in their possession, custody, or control. The court accepted this representation in denying Ms. Lively's motion on this score. The court ordered by the Wayfarer defendants to produce Signal communications no later than September 8th. Instead of complying, the Wayfarer defendants made an 11th hour request for a 1-week extension to complete this production, which this court denied for failure to demonstrate good cause. Ignoring the court's order, the Wayfarer defendants engaged in self-help and produced just a handful of Signal communications late, and then unilaterally continue to produce more at random intervals with no explanation for another month until October 9th. In the footnote, it says, in addition to 5 discovery-related motions with third parties, Ms. Lively had to file 7 separate motions to compel defendants' compliance with various discovery obligations. On September 8th at 11:56, certain Wayfarer defendants produced Signal communications. They're really mad that they, hit the deadline, but only hit it with 4 minutes to spare, and they gave them 80,000-page documents. You wanted it, they gave it to you. And do you know how many times Blake Lively in the court systems on the 11th hour has filed something on her deadline? So it's it's a deadline for a reason, right? But them, going and still producing things, that's a little questionable. But they said that they weren't able to do it until, they gave their phones up and stuff like that. So I don't know. Let's see. The Wayfarer defendants have established a clear pattern of failing to comply with their discovery obligations and this court's order, explaining that Lively did not know at the time that the Wayfarer parties would fail to honor the court's orders regarding the timing of discovery. The Wayfarer defendants have also not produced a privilege log for all withheld communications, which will again require further motion practice. Furthermore, inexplicably, Mr. Heath, Mr. Wallace, and Miss Abel have not produced any of the signal communications that were produced by Skyline, documents that were improperly withheld for privilege by Skyline and produced only after an order from this court. Nor have defendants produced any other signal communications or, for Mr. Wallace, any voice memo that predate December 20th, including in the August through December timeframe, when they were actively discussing, among other things, an offensive strategy to protect Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer's reputation and to bury Miss Lively, communications that strike at the very heart of this case. Legal standing. Then they go into the legal standing of it, that Rule 37E, a party may be sanctioned if electronically stored information that should have been preserved in the anticipation or conduct of litigation is lost because a party failed to take reasonable steps to preserve it, and it cannot be restored or replaced through additional discovery. Defendants intentionally violated their duty to preserve communications. So then they say that, they failed to do that because they deleted it. I'm sure that's what everything in here says. It cannot be restored because Signal, of course, has an auto deletion. And they're saying that Wayfarer should have intentionally kept every single message in Signal. They use Signal for a reason, and that's so that it auto deletes. Okay. When triggered, the litigant must do more than refrain from intentionally destroying relevant evidence. The litigant must also take affirmative steps to prevent inadvertent spoliation. Wayfarer, It Ends With Us, their principals, and Miss Abel had an obligation to preserve no later than November of 2023. It is well settled that a duty to preserve is triggered when a party receives a demand letter. But they didn't receive a demand letter. Here, based on the service of the protections document, Wayfarer, It Ends With Us, and their principals had a duty to preserve beginning on November 9th, 2023. What's wild is it's funny now that they keep adding It Ends With Us because, as we know, they never had It Ends With Us on anything. And Wayfarer's fighting that and thinking that's why it should be dropped because Wayfarer didn't employ It Ends With Us did. So it's funny that now they're adding It Ends With Us to everything. The same is true for Miss Abel. As explained in the transmittal email issued by Miss Lively's counsel, the protections document outlined a list of protections that will need to be guaranteed and observed by the film's producers. One such protection included prohibiting retaliation of any kind, including during publicity and promotional work. Further, Miss Lively's counsel included a customary warning that if the production is unwilling to accept or uphold these protections, our client is prepared to pursue her full legal rights and remedies. Emphasis added. There can be no dispute that this letter put Wayfarer, It Ends With Us, their principals, and Miss Abel on notice of Miss Lively's forthcoming suit. At the latest, each Wayfarer defendant acknowledges, dun dun dun, indeed it was at this point that Wayfarer made the strategic decision to smear Miss Lively. Why they're redacting the word smear is absolutely crazy. Then they also talk about the Tag defendants and the Wallace defendants. They had an obligation to preserve no later, but they've already gone over that with the judge, and the judge was like, Wallace can't produce documents that they don't have. Okay, it was on auto delete. The Tag defendants, similarly, Melissa Nathan, so now we're talking about Melissa Nathan, do not dispute that litigation relating to the film was anticipated by August 2024, although, as noted above, Miss Abel, this is consistent with the Tag defendants' plan to lawyer up and get ready for with Miss Lively. Why is that word redacted? That's so crazy. Like, it's just too much. And get ready for with Miss Lively. For their part, the Wallace defendants were aware of the protections document and thereby Miss Lively's underlying allegations, as well as the provision explicitly prohibiting retaliation when they were onboarded in early August 2024 to support Tag's offensive. Defendants failed to preserve messages. Defendants took no affirmative steps to preserve their ephemeral messages. They did just the opposite. At a critical moment, they elected to communicate primarily through Signal, which they knew full well would automatically delete their messages, and took no steps to ensure that their messages would be preserved. It is no answer that the Tagg and Wallace defendants appear to have used ephemeral messaging as part of their regular business practice, because settled law requires a party to suspend auto-deletion or ephemeral features upon anticipating litigation. The messages are lost and cannot be replaced. Yeah, because they're deleted. It is beyond dispute that the messages, Signal communications, and voice memos at issue here are lost and incapable of being retrieved. The court previously acknowledged as much in denying Ms. Lively's prior motion to compel the Wallace defendants to produce Signal communications. Accordingly, there is no cognizable way to obtain these communications. This final element of ESI spoliation is met. Defendant established the elements of ESI spoliation under Rule 37E, where, among other things, there were no alternative method for obtaining the lost information. Defendants intentionally used ephemeral communications to execute their plan in an untraceable manner without fingerprints. The decision to use ephemeral communications was deliberate and intentional to prevent documentary evidence of their social manipulation plan from falling into the wrong hands, whether those hands belonged to Miss Lively, anyone sympathetic to her, or the court. Courts in this circuit have held that intent under Rule 37E can be demonstrated where, as here, the defendants knew that they had a duty to preserve and allowed the original dates on the event recorder to be overwritten and destroyed or recycled. Defendants elected to communicate through Signal and voice memos and possibly, but not sure, and possibly other ephemeral means. That is because an integral part of their plan was to execute their mission without leaving fingerprints or a trace. And then it says there are some depositions, I guess, that match that. Worst of all, as early as August 2024, Mr. Freeman was aware of defendants' use of Signal, as evidenced by the fact that he was included on Signal threads and did nothing to ensure the ongoing preservation of these communications. Licensed attorney who undoubtedly was aware of the basic document retention requirements had culpable state of mind in deleting emails. Instead, recently produced communications confirm that Mr. Freeman was not only a participant on Signal at relevant times, but even after the lawsuit was brought, he was directly involved. Taken together, these actions more than meet the requisite level of intent. But you don't get a right to communications between client and attorney. So what does it matter if Brian Freeman was part of those conversations? This is nuts. Ms. Lively has been severely prejudiced by defendants' failure to preserve relevant communications. The prejudice to Ms. Lively's is obvious. Among other things, the defendants failed to preserve more than 4 months' worth of communications from a platform that it is undisputed that the Wayfarer defendants used to discuss topics relevant to this litigation. This, in turn, has impaired Ms. Lively's ability to fully prosecute her claims and to rebut defendants' defenses, particularly defendants' widely publicized claim that the Wallace defendants decided, after being retained, that no proactive digital campaign work was required given organic online sentiment. In addition, Ms. Lively has suffered economic prejudice based on the time and expense incurred to prove the use and disappearance of defendants' Signal messages and voice memos, as evidenced by the many motions to compel that Ms. Lively was forced to file. Oh my gosh, is now she's going to claim that she's even more of a victim? She's even more of a victim from Wayfarer, these big bad monsters that even on a call with Steve Soritz, he never said anything bad about her. They never insulted her in all of the Signal messages. They've never said anything insulting or smearing against Blake Lively, except she's different and she's a woman who always thinks that she's right. That's the only bad things they have said. And now what? She's a victim of Wayfarer yet again because they didn't save the messages. Now I bet when she loses this case, she's going to be like, well, of course I lost. They didn't save any of the messages. I couldn't prove it. You couldn't prove it even if you had the messages, sweetheart. You know what I'm saying? Then they talk about how the willful destruction of evidence warrants severe sanctions based upon defendant's willful misconduct, intentionally utilizing ephemeral messaging as to Mr. Wallace self-deleting voice memos to avoid the production of relevant communications, and the prejudice caused to Ms. Lively as a result. Relief under Rule 37E is warranted. An appropriate sanction under Rule 37E should be deter parties from engaging in spoliation, place the risk of an erroneous judgment on the party who wrongfully created the risk, and restore the prejudiced party to the same position he would have been in absent the wrongful destruction of evidence by the opposing party. A court should also consider whether the sanctions it imposes will prevent abuses of the judicial system and promote the efficient administration of justice. What about, oh my gosh, what about y'all? Y'all abusing the court system. Because defendant acted culpably in failing to preserve relevant communications, an adverse inference instruction is warranted to remedy the prejudice to Ms. Lively in pursuing her claim. When, as here, a spoliating party has acted willfully or in bad faith, a jury can be instructed that certain facts are deemed admitted and must be accepted as true. Bam! There you have it. They can't prove it. So that's the whole point of this letter. They want at trial to be able to tell the jury that even though there's no evidence, to accept it as true. There we go. We get to the bottom of it. They can't prove their case. If it goes to trial, they want to be able to tell the jury, just believe me. Just believe it. We don't have evidence, but you have to accept it as true. That's been Blake Lively's claim ever since December 20th of 2024. Believe me, believe me, believe me. I have no evidence. I have no proof. I have no proof. You saw it with your own eyes. You saw my horrible PR marketing. You saw all my past interviews. You know I'm a horrible human being. But please believe me, this wasn't organic. Please. But there it is. That's it right there. I think that is the meat and potatoes of the entire thing. I think right here they want to be able to tell the jury about this untraceable spear campaign with no evidence. Just as they said it, when, as here, a spoliating party has acted willfully or in bad faith, a jury can be instructed that certain facts are deemed admitted and must be accepted as true. Wow. Accordingly, to remedy the prejudice caused by the spoliated evidence, Ms. Lively respectfully seeks the following adverse interference. Defendants intentionally deleted and failed to preserve relevant evidence for this litigation. Defendants anticipated litigation with Ms. Lively by at least August 2024, but nonetheless elected to use methods of communications that automatically delete, such as Signal, and as to the Wallace defendants' voice memos to discuss the execution of the digital campaign against Ms. Lively, and defendants failed to take affirmative steps to preserve such communications prior to December 20th of 2024. You may presume from defendants' failure to preserve these Signal communications and voice memos that defendants did, in fact, execute the plan that TAG recommended and for which the Wayfarer parties retained the Wallace defendants, and that defendants intentionally failed to preserve their communications in order to hide this fact. Bam. There you go. That's what they want to be able to do. They want to be able to still prove, or at least show the jury, hey, this is what the email is, and this is what they did. We can't prove it because they deleted the text messages, but you have to take this as fact. That is crazy shady. In addition, this court should issue sanctions precluding defendants from asserting that they did not execute the digital campaign. What? So they can't even defend themselves or deny it? In addition, the court should issue sanctions precluding defendants from asserting that they did not execute the digital campaign to develop a negative narrative about Miss Lively. Yo, this is crazy. That's crazy. They can't even deny it. They can't even say the truth. Alternatively, Miss Lively should be permitted to present evidence and argument to the jury regarding the lost documents and seek a curative instruction under Rule 37E based upon the instructions proposed above, with the exception of the adverse instruction. With respect to the Wallace defendants, this court should further order an adverse interference that the Wallace defendants possess the requisite knowledge of their co-conspirators in forum actions to support a finding of personal jurisdiction under CPLR 302, and that the Wallace defendants independently understood that their actions would have the requisite consequences in New York. So now she's still going after Jed Wallace because, he's not out of here yet. He was, and then Lively brought him back in, and then he's trying to get out again, but the judge is lagging. I mean, he hasn't even answered yet. How, that's kind of crazy. Finally, defendants should be penalized with monetary sanctions in order to repay Miss Lively for the reasonable attorney fees and costs for bringing this motion. Wow. The audacity. Dang. And then when you got to the end there, you saw exactly what it was about. And now we have Stephanie motherfucking Jones, okay? But I'm not even going to go over all of Stephanie Jones's in this video, at least, because it looks like it's the exact same thing that Blake Lively just filed, but now it's to Jennifer Abel, and it's all about the auto-deleting messaging. And just how wild is it that they both filed on the exact same day? Y'all still colluding with each other? Okay. I will definitely go read that myself because that one is 25 pages with also her memorandum. So I'm not going to do it on this video, but just know that Stephanie Jones is also doing exactly what Blake Lively just did, but now to Jen Abel, and it is talking about auto-deleting the signal messages and everything. I am actually shocked at this because I can't believe that they're taking it oh my gosh, it's a little bit wild. It's kind of crazy. And I think what they're doing is distracting the Wayfarer people because this is a big week. In 2 days, the deadline to appeal will be officially over. So I think what they're trying to do is draw their attention somewhere else and not focus on what they need to be doing, which is summary judgment, appealing, as well as Jennifer Abel has until October 31st to reply to Stephanie motherfucking Jones. So it just seems like they're wasting everyone's time, in my opinion. Honestly, we'll see what the Judge Lyman has to say, but that's the filing. That's what was filed. Again, I'm going to read over the JonesWorks one, and I'll do a video on it sometime soon, probably tonight or tomorrow morning. Let me know what you guys think about this. This is absolutely, to me, wild and crazy. Let's just see what happens. Anyway, I hope you're all having a great day. Look out for the other videos because they're coming. And if anything else happens, I will definitely be here for you and let you know. That was crazy. What a roller coaster. Let me know what you think, okay? Because right now I'm spinning. So let me know. I love you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.